Good morning. Hello, and thanks for joining us at Startup Grind this morning. Today's event is brought to you by Spark Center, a regional innovation center in Durham region. And as the Eastern Ontario chapter of Startup Grind, Spark Center is thrilled to bring you these monthly events to inspire, motivate, and challenge you. My name is Gary Jarosz, and I'm chair of the board of the Spark Center. And in my professional career, I was very fortunate to be able to work for a number of Fortune 100 companies and also for a number of entrepreneurial startups. Now, those were later in my career, but they were very interesting times, and they are very different than working for Fortune 100 companies. And our guest today is going to take us through a journey where they started it very early in their career. Now, before we begin, I would like to thank Spark Center's elite partners, and I will name them for you: Bereskin and Parr LLP, Finance Without Borders, RDP Associates, Leighton, Suresh Law, Real Estate Refreshed, and Coldwell Banker. Now, the interview portion of today's event will start shortly, but don't forget to stay tuned after the interview for networking. And if you haven't tried networking on the Hopin platform before, it's fairly easy. Even I can do it. It's fun, and it's a great way to meet some new faces. One last thing I do want to mention before we kick things off is Spark Center's quarterly publication, the Spark Business and Innovation Magazine. If you haven't yet, be sure to visit thesparkmagazine.ca, so thesparkmagazine.ca, to check out the past issues and subscribe to your free print and or digital copy of the upcoming fall 2023 issue. Now, let's get into it. I'm looking forward to chatting with today's guest. I had the opportunity of meeting Jason Atkins a number of years ago, and our paths have crossed a number of times, and learning about his journey. I've heard some of it. I think everybody is going to be truly excited and thrilled to hear about it. He started early in high school. I can remember me being in high school. Things I was thinking about was working at the grocery store, maybe doing grass cutting jobs or snow shoveling in the winter. Jason actually started in high school, developing and founding his first technology startup. And he now has a company that serves over 300 of the most recognizable brands worldwide. So now I'd like to welcome the founder and CEO of 360 Insights, Jason Atkins, to join me on the stage.
Hey, Gary, nice to see you.
Good to see you again, Jason. And thanks very much for coming in from New Orleans for today. That was great. I know you do a lot of traveling on business. So nice that you could be in the Durham area for our startup grind. So now, Jason, it's a really, truly great story. And I could tell some of it, but I would never do it justice. So I want to turn it over to you. A lot of people, their first jobs in high school, like I said, is grocery stores, golf clubs, restaurants, the local McDonald's. You started your entrepreneurial streak really early in high school. You founded your first technology company. Tell us about that. I want everybody to be able to enjoy the story.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go way back, because I think that like my starting probably was similar to others. I mean, I had wonderful parents, and, they always made sure that I had a roof over the head and food on the table. But I grew up as a tinkerer. Like, I loved to take things apart. And so, like 7, 8 years old, you get the RV, the remote control car, and, I take it apart like the day after. And of course, my parents are frustrated. They're like, we buy you that for Christmas. And I was like, well, then how do I make money so I can buy another one? Because I was really interested in how that actually came together. And so my dad's like, you should get a paper route. And I was like, that's a great idea. And so I started and again, going way back, but I think this will be beneficial to people, is I started delivering papers when I was 9 years old, and 7 days a week, Toronto Star. And I was like, well, how do I now I have money. I buy Commodore 64, and I'm taking it apart and trying to learn all about computers. And then I met this one guy at Toronto Star who had a much bigger paper route than I did. And I was like, well, how'd you get the bigger paper route? He's like, we got to go door to door and get people signed up. And so I was like, I'm going to go door to door and get people signed up. So 10 years old, knocking on doors, trying to get people to get the paper. And nobody's getting the paper. So I went back to this guy and I was like, look, I'm going door to door and saying do you want the Toronto Star? And everyone's like, no. And he's like, what do you You don't sell the paper by saying you want the Toronto Star. You sell the paper by understanding what's the value creation for that person. I'm 10 years old, learning about value creation. So then he's like, watch this. So I go door to door with him one time. He knocks on the door, and person answers the door. He's like, He's like, oh man, I love your house. You've got a great porch out front. Like, you must get up early in the morning and have a coffee on the porch. And, what do you do during the day? And they're like, oh, I'm an insurance broker. Oh, you're an insurance broker. And like, so you probably really want to build connections with the people that you have during the conversation of the day. And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, you know what I do? I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I deliver the Toronto Star. So people like you can sit on the front porch, have a coffee, read the Toronto Star, and know more than everyone else does about what's happening in the world. So when you sit with the person, you have the conversation. So I was like, that's very different than how I was selling it, but that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going door to door, and all of a sudden, like, I have one of the biggest paper routes, at 10 years old, 11 years old, and so I kept that job. And then, of course, you start looking at it like, oh, I can only make so much of the paper route, and I can buy my Commerce 64, but like, the PCs are coming out now. And like, I want to build a PC, and like, I want additional RAM and hard drives and like tape drives. And I was like, I need more money. Like, how do I do that? And my dad, had a friend that was a manager at a Red Lobster. And I don't know if you're allowed to do this, but at 13, I was a dishwasher at Red Lobster. And I'll tell you, like, anyone who's runs business, please like hang out with some people in the service industry, because you want to talk about pressure cooker. Like, yes, I was in the kitchen. I moved into cook, and, and I had a lot of fun there. But I would hear the stories of the servers going out and having to deal with really challenging customers. And what I realized in that job from everyone was that, like, you don't know what's happened in somebody's life that day that put them in the situation that you're in with that person. So you need to have empathy in every conversation, because you just don't know. And so I worked that. And then as I was building computers, as you talked about my first company, I was really just building computers on the side. And a good friend of mine growing up, Rob Parker, had a father, Doug Parker, who was a contract CFO at a lot of spots. And he would start to work with like medical clinics, and they knew that I could build computers. And Doug's like, hey, why don't you like start to build computers or networks at these medical clinics? And I was like, I could do that, and started networking, in Brantford, Ontario. Avenue Medical Center was like my big one. And I would connect and install EMR software. And Doug's like, this is a real business. Like, how about I invest $10,000? We become partners and you run this thing. And I was like, for sure. I'm in high school. Like, this is great, And so I ran that company and met a ton of really smart people that taught me so many lessons. And I think this is, as I go through my story, you'll learn like all of my lessons were at the feet of people who have experience, right? Like, Doug Parker was a finance person. I met him when I was like 16 years old, maybe 15 years old. And like, my first partner was probably one of the smartest financial people I've ever met in my life. And so you want to be an entrepreneur, read a financial statement. I could do that at 16, and I learned so much from Doug. And then Doug introduced me to Dean Braun, who's like a great, person in Brantford where I grew up. And at the time I was doing well, but I would never thought really, really big. And Dean thought big all the time, and at the time there was the internet was just coming out. I was trying to get people to let me do my computer networks, connect their offices via fiber to my warehouse where things were. And I remember Dean and Jim Estel, who's a great Canadian entrepreneur. We were sitting down one night, and I was like, I just can't get business to sign up. They all want the server under like the CEO's desk. And I was probably like 18 or something like this at the time. And Jim's like, Jay, perception's reality. And you're trying to create the perception that your stuff's more secure than the CEO's office, And I was like, oh man. And Dean's like, let's rent a bank building. So we rented a bank when I was like 18 or 19 years old, thanks to Dean. We turned the vault into a data room. We put a boardroom table in front of the vault. And that was my first company. We literally like, people come in and like talked about security and the internet, and we're going to connect you to the internet, but we're going to make sure you're secure. And they're like, oh, where's the server going to be? I'm like, oh, it's in there. And I go turn the dials and like open the door. And anyone knows digital security realize like none of that meant shit. Like, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. None of that meant anything. But the reality was perception is reality, and they felt secure. And so my first company was a data center company doing computer security that I eventually sold when I was about 21. Did okay, not crazy, but it was the ride of being an entrepreneur. And then I started running a company, a marketing communications company in the US, where I started working with these very large brands. And we were doing all communication out to all their dealers and stuff. And it was an amazing journey there at Cleveland, Ohio, or Medina, which is south of Cleveland. And 30 days after I joined, it was going through management buyout. They lost their women business owned status. And the board, said, hey, why don't you step in and be the CEO? Like, you don't know anyone, you can turn the company around. And it was a crazy 4-year journey. I moved to Whitby just before that. And I was going back and forth. Sunday nights, I drive home Friday nights. And it was a crazy ride of downs and ups. And then one day I came home and, my daughter, who would have been about, I guess about 4 years old at the time, cousins are over and my daughter's there, and she hates to tell the story, but this is reality is, and they're like, Uncle Jason's here. And then my daughter's like, Uncle Jason's here. And I was like, wow, like I'm not around. I know slip of tongue, but I'm not around enough that my daughter knows who I am really. And so I decided that I was going to buy the company, moved to Canada. They didn't want to sell it to me. And so I decided to leave and take 6 months off and be a great father, great husband. And about 2 weeks into that, realized I'm not really good at either one of those jobs, but I'm an entrepreneur. So I rented an office space on Burn Street in Whitby, Ontario, under my own name, and said, hey, what is it that we're going to build? And I reached out to a bunch of those brands, and I talked to Chris from Bosch, and I was like, you do all those promotions. How do you know like where to do them and how to do them? And they were doing a lot of things in Excel at the time. And I was like, what if I build technology that can really help you manage that stuff and really help you connect better with your dealers, motivate those dealers, and measure success. And we did that. And, we started bootstrapped at 2008. Of course, as an entrepreneur, I thought we'd launch it and have it going in 90 days. It took us 9 months, but bootstrapped it until 2013. And I met I think the individual who introduced us, Howard Gwynn, and Howard, one of my favorite people in the world, said, hey, you should raise some capital and try to swing for the fences. And I was like, I don't know how to raise capital. And he introduced me to Sid Paquette, who's, one of my favorite people as well. And Sid hung out with me for 6 months, taught me how to, to really put the package together for the business. And Omer's Ventures invested, we were $3 million in revenue in 2013. And we went through this journey. And 2016, we raised money from Seju, who have been a fantastic investors, really help us operationalize the business, do M&A. And today's we're over $100 million in revenue. We're 600 people, and it's been this crazy journey of mentors that I've been able to be so fortunate to be in front of. Like one of my early people that I met was David Stein, and David is like, he's on my board today. He was an early investor, but he helped me on go-to-market. He would challenge my thinking. Like one day, David said to me, hey, Jay, like, why don't you just ask your clients to pay annual in advance? And I was like, nobody pays annual in advance. He's like, have you asked? I'm like, no. And we did it. And all of a sudden, the cash flow changes in the company. And like, what you realize as an entrepreneur, like the way to become an entrepreneur and do really well in your business is really at the feet of wise people that have experience that have been there. And so it's been a crazy journey that I've had throughout my life. And, I'm very appreciative to everyone that's been part of it. What else you want to know, Gary?
That's a great story. That's honestly, Jason, that's such a great story. And you gave such a good context for where you came from and how it came about. But I think the thing that stuck out most for me in everything that you talked about was you surrounded your people with, I don't want to come out and be bold and say that we're smarter than you, but you certainly figured out how to leverage the skill sets of other people that could help your business grow. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you, was it networking that connected you? Because, I hear the same story all the time. You got to get smart people around you to really grow your business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Networking was a really important thing. And make sure that when you meet somebody really smart, you stay close to them for a period of time. And so my right hand in my company is Kevin O'Neill. I met Kevin, playing hockey, as we do. And, he played center, I played wing. And one day we were signing a large deal, and I was like, in the, dressing room afterwards, I was like, we got a client sending us $30 million. I don't have somebody who's got really good controls around it. Does anyone in the dressing room know somebody who's like a strong financial person? They're like, oh, have you met Kevin? And he's a CA, and so I brought Kevin as an advisor. And of course, at the time, I couldn't afford to bring in a partner in the company because I was bootstrapped in 2009. But, Kevin came in as an advisor, helped me for a couple of weeks. I kept them around. And the day I raised capital, I brought Kevin in to be full time with me. And so you think about that journey, it was 3-4 years of having Kevin around me to support me until I was in a spot to bring him on. But I always kept in contact with Kevin, and same with what I talked about, Howard earlier. It's you find great people and you ask questions, and they're going to introduce you to other great people. I met you via Howard, and Daniel Class, who's another one of my investors. It's I have the best investors in the world because I can call them any day and ask them at any point a question and have a real conversation. And that's where I always talk about raising money is like a marriage, investors need entrepreneurs as much as entrepreneurs need investors. And so because you're getting into that relationship, make sure you find the best ones. I literally have the best investors in the world in my company because I can call them at any time of the day, no matter where they are in the world, and we'll have a great conversation, And I think that's what's really important is you reach out to people and ask, and people will, you'd be surprised how many times people will say, no problem. I mean, big part of Durham region for me, like when I was starting the company, I was telling Sid that I wanted to, build $1 billion company in Whitby. He's like, dude, you need to have like dinner with Jim Vasili. And he's like, I'm gonna set that up. And I was like, okay. And had dinner with Jim, a couple other entrepreneurs. And I was like, hey, Jim, I'm going to build $1 billion company in Whitby, Ontario. And he's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, what other tech companies are in Whitby, Ontario? And I was like, well, there's us, And he's like, yeah. So what we learned in Waterloo is you got to build community, It's like, oh man, And so like I got heavily involved in Spark Center. I started an investment fund, started investing in companies. And like, what you realize is that like that nugget of wisdom has helped generate a lot of the things that we're building in this community that we're part of, But I would have never been in part of those things unless I sat down in front of somebody who's gone through that. Like, look at Communitech, look at Waterloo, look what they've done there. It's unbelievable, and that's like what we want to build out here.
Well, and you brought up another very important point too about your investors and your board. And a lot of startups, they get advisory boards or they have investors that sit on their board.
Yeah,
but they're not always actively involved in the company, or not as actively involved that they should be, to the degree that they should be. So what's your secret in keeping your board and your investors involved? Because that's a big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I would say this is a Howard Gwynn lesson. He was always like, never hide anything and always put all the shit on the table first, right? And I think that's really, really important in all these kind of, like, I've been on a few boards and it's like everyone's like happy and things are always like rosy and and the reality is like that doesn't, if everything's perfect, you're never going to intrigue the person that actually wants to help you out. Like, entrepreneurship's tough. I've double mortgaged my house and ran out of money, like trying to do this stuff in life, and like I've had creditors calling me, and like I've gone through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship multiple times, things aren't always rosy, and so if you want to make sure that you have the right people around the table, engage them, talk to them about the challenge that you go through, have open, honest conversations. To me, that's so important. And don't make it your friends. Like, your friends aren't your advisors or your board members. Like, get people that have been there, done that before, and find communities a part of. Like one of my favorite communities I'm part of is one called Mastermind Talks. And Jason Ganyard curates the members of his communities, somebody with the biggest heart I've ever met, and he brings some of the smartest people in the world together. And we have tough conversations, and I think that's really, really important. You have to challenge yourself all the time, to continue to grow. When I think about our business, I always say to everyone in the company, we grow 30 to 40% a year every year, which means everyone in the company, including me, needs to grow 30 to 40% every year. And if we don't grow, we are going to fail, So how do you continue to grow? You grow by experience of others. That's the best way to grow.
So let's go back to your talk about selling newspapers and understanding how to position the product. And then you talked about really kind of the start of 360 Insights, where you were talking about dealers and how they were managing. But what was the key pain point? Like, and that's the key thing, is what is the business issue, or what's the challenge that the customers are finding that you can relate your product to? So how did you find that pain point? What was the key pain point?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like, you always got to sell on value, right? Like, never sell on price. You always got to sell on value, right? And so like a lot of people try to build ROIs in businesses, and they always look at like, what's the cost? So you think of the cost scenario to 360 would be, I have internal people that do stuff on Excel to manage this claiming. So the pain point was, Bosch, we'll use Bosch as an example, appliance company. They have 10,000 retailers in North America. If you walk into a Bosch store tomorrow to buy a Bosch appliance, you may get a rebate on it. You got to file that rebate and get that rebate paid to you. So Bosch has to work with somebody, because there's, 1 million appliances sold a year from Bosch. How do they manage 1 million claims a year? So that's a pain point. Then the person who sold you it might get paid an incentive for selling to you. Like, they have 20,000 people that sell Bosch appliances. That's a pain point. How do they make sure these people get paid? So the ROI calc may be, I have a bunch of people internally that use Excel to figure out these payments or whatever. The business value is what you got to realize is that they're an unbelievable experience for a customer, creates a customer for life. So if you're doing things internally in Excel and slowly and sending checks via mail, and it takes you 12 weeks to pay a rebate, Your customer who just bought your $4,000 fridge may be frustrated. If you had a solution you could pay somebody in 7 days, they may be a very happy customer and leave a great review, which is important. So create the value creation, which how do we create a customer for life? For that salesperson, I always say, like, quickly reward the behavior you want repeated. So if you're a salesperson, are you going to sell the product that the person pays your incentive tomorrow, or are you going to sell the product where the person pays you next quarter? And so build the tooling to pay somebody tomorrow. And so that's what we essentially did, was how do we build the tooling to ensure the experience that our clients' brands have with their customers and their customers' customers is unbelievable, and create these customers for life or clients for life. That's the value creation that we do. And then it's hard to put a dollar amount on that.
But you bring up a very good point, because, you're the founder, so you obviously understand the technology, but you have a lot of people in your business who are out selling that technology every day. And as you said, you can't sell on price, and you can't just sell it on the bells and whistles of the product. You have to understand your customer's business and be able to translate how the 360 Insights solution is going to help them in their business. And that's a key thing. So how do you democratize that kind of knowledge to everybody in your organization as the founder and CEO?
Yeah, it's a lot of when you think of, like, what's your job of as a CEO in a company? It's communication, right? It's communication to people. Like, we only have businesses because of the people that are part of it. We only have clients because our people take care of our customers. And so you have to make sure that you're always communicating, you're always inspiring the team of where you're going, you're always talking about what you're doing and why it's so different than what other people are doing, and you're taking care of your people. So for me, it's communication is your job within the business. Make sure you hire great people that are motivated, but continue to make sure you're always talking the story. And so, like, one of the things that we also try to do is, like, use your own technology. Like, I meet so many companies that build technology that they could figure out how to use in their business that they don't use themselves. And so, like, when you log in the morning at 360, your portal technology you use is the same portal technology that our clients use. So we use our own tooling inside. So when you're talking to somebody about, like, well, how does it work and what's it look like, everyone in the company uses it. Everyone's part of that same community tooling, that we have that's out there. So I think that's really important for people to look at, is how do you continue to communicate through your business all the time?
That's great advice. So, Jason, thinking back over 360 Insights, what was the biggest challenge you faced? What was the biggest roadblock you faced as you built that business?
I would say the biggest challenge is finding the right people and recruiting. Like I always tell every CEO or any leader in a business, like, a big part of your job is always be recruiting. How do you bring people into your organization, and those people are the ones that are going to help you unlock the next level within your business. And so, finding great people is always really, really tough within the business. So that, I would say, is the biggest challenge that we've run into, or I've run into over time. That's
great. Now, let me tell you, obviously there's other companies that do similar things or that try to get into your space. What sets 360 Insights apart from all those other competitors?
I would say vision. One of the things that I love the most is thinking about where you're going. I think of, like, how did Salesforce win? It's like a company that I have a mad respect for. And Mark Benioff has created, to me, my favorite company in the world. And what he's done is he's created an organization, that innovates unbelievable all the time, but is always talking about innovation. Like, when you're a Salesforce customer, you want to be a customer because, he does Dreamforce. He runs, like, where they're going as a company. You're like, oh man, like, I want what he's talking about. Even though he doesn't have it today, the product he's talking about is the product that I want. So I'm always like, we always got to be talking about where we're going. And you want clients to always be thinking, oh man, like, if we're not on this train, we're on the wrong train. Like, how do I make sure that we're on this train? I think that's really important. His team is really inspiring. People that work at Salesforce love Salesforce. I want to make sure that that's the vibe that people feel when they come here. A lot of times, like, for us to win deals, we're like, come to Whitby, Ontario, meet our team. A lot of people come here, meet our team, and are like, I want to move forward with you. And the other thing he does is impact. And I'll tell a little story about impact. Is, in my early days, I talked a lot about, working really hard. I think I've worked 7 days a week for my entire life. And I'm not saying that, like, a lot of people say it, like, you got to work insanely hard. I love what I do every day. Like, I wouldn't choose to do other things. I love what I do. And I love what I do so much because because I get to see the impact that our organization makes in the lives of our team members that we have and the communities that we serve around the world, which is really, really, really important to me. And so though I work 7 days a week, it's because I work 7 days a week because I get to see this impact. And early in my life, I didn't have that same philosophy about impact. I always thought like, hey, I want to build a big company, because if I build a big company, we can make a lot of impact in the world. I always say like, $1 billion company, why I said that was because I want to give away 1% a year and nobody ever questioned that. And if you're $1 billion company, $10 million a year is a lot of money that you can make really big things happen. And so when we started early days, I unfortunately lost my brother, who was so involved in community and was such a good-hearted person. And I looked at that and I was like, look at, one is you don't have infinite time. And so how do you leverage time and make sure that, it's the only real resource you can't buy in life. And so how do you leverage time, and how do you make impact? Like, he made so much impact in people's lives, including myself. And, and as I started 360, in the early days, I had, as people in Durham region may know, Todd Skinner was one of my partners in the company early days. And Todd was the same thing. Like, he gave all of his time to make impact in the world. And in 2012, we were trying to figure out how do we do data entry and we couldn't staff it in Canada or US. And Todd's like, Jay, you talk about impact and you're always waiting for this building $1 billion company to make impact. He's like, why don't you bring work around the world? And so we started doing work in Kenya, having people do data entry work. That was challenging. So we moved to Haiti. I flew there in January of 2013. We found an unbelievable partner there. And we have over 100 people that do data work for us in Haiti today. And going there and meeting the team and seeing the impact on life. It's like they do amazing work, and they get paid value for doing that work, which is awesome for us. And so I love that. And as we continue to grow the business, one of the things that we do is everyone in the company, not everyone, a lot of people in the organization will give $1, $2 off the paycheck. We match that. We fund medical clinics in Haiti. We fund schools in Haiti. We fund things in the communities that we're part of. And what you realize is you start to build this community of people that care. And I'm so fortunate because of my brother and Todd that I really started to learn about impacting and people and caring, and that to me is like, start to bring that together. Like the very first month we made money, we built a well through charity water. And that was like, for me, it was like, we made $5,000 a month. We're going to build a well. Like, we're not taking profit out of this company. We're just going to use this company to make impact in the world. So like an engine for impact. And then, 6 months later, we got the letter from Charity Water, which coordinates and pictures of the well. And it was like this moving moment when I read it to the organization, and you saw people in our company like start to tear up and be like, I can't believe I'm part of a company that has a heart. And it goes back to like Salesforce. Salesforce has a heart. Benioff created the 1% movement, 1% of time, 1% of profit, 1% of stock, to do good in the world. And I just think that, he's created such an organization, that I have so much respect for him. And that's what I want to build. I want to build the company, that people look at around the world and say, that company cares. It takes care of its people. It innovates, so it keeps its customers, but it has a heart and takes care of the communities that it's part of.
Wow, that's extremely impressive and very honorable. Not only from you driving it, but also from a company perspective and culture. You talked about a lot of really, really impressive things. What is the one thing that you're most proud of that has come out of this journey so far?
Wow. I don't even know if I can pick one. I mean, like I'm proud of so many things. Like I'm proud of, we've had people join the organization in the early days and have amazing careers now because of the growth that, we supported them through their growth, but they had the tenacity to go back to school and do things. And so we have so many people that I'm proud of in this company that have helped, like Christy Elliott, who's a person, in town here, started lived down the street from me. I was like, Christy, I just need somebody to come ahead and support. And she started answering calls. And I think then she moved into finance and implementation. And then she's like, I love HR stuff. And I was like, I need somebody to be in, HR, which is now people, that thinks like me, and she cares about people like I do. And then she's like, I want to go get trained for it. She went back to school and got her certifications. Like those things, those are proud moments when you have people that come through. Like I have two guys that when I started 360 worked for me for free for a period of time. They started working with me in 2001. Kevin Martin and Troy Casole started working with me in 2001. I started 360. I had no money. Like I spent it all in the first 12 months trying to build 360, and I have no money left. I'm like, guys, I'm going to pay you at some point, but I'm paying you in options today. They've both done really, really well in their life, but because they believed in it, right? And I'm so proud of what they've been able to create, being part of this. I'm proud of, a couple of years ago, we did a large secondary, and I always say, everyone in the company are owners, everyone in the company have options. And, I guess probably 3 years ago in the summer, I was like, the next time we raise money, I was like, to our investors, we need to enable people to be able to sell some secondary, in this company, some of their options that have vested options. And so we went across the board and we delivered back to our team members $3.5 million to our employees. Wow. People were buying cars, we're buying houses, we're buying pools, that's proud moments to me. You see that, when I go to Haiti now, when I started in Haiti, it was an unbelievable experience. Everyone came to work on these, they call taps, so public transportation. A lot of people were living together, living with their families. I go there now, they all own houses, they own their own cars, they put their siblings for school, proud moment, and so I'm just so proud of the things, the impact that we've been able to make. But if there's one thing I'm proud of, it's impact. And what I've learned is as you scale, impact is contagious. Impact, people celebrate, your clients celebrate it, our team members celebrate it. We're doing this. Somebody in our company, Amanda, came with this idea let's create this thing called Walk for Good. Maybe we can raise $5,000 and start to do something. And so we found this project in Haiti called the Campus Project through Compe, where we're building literally a campus for education for people. And I was like, I think we can do more than $5,000. And I started calling up the network, and we've raised over $250,000 in the last 2 years. We're launching it again in September this year. We've made it an annual thing now. We raise over $100,000 a year by other companies joining on. And to me, that's that just creates community and impact. Impact to me is say to my kids, your only job in life is to leave the world a better place than when you got here. That's my job. That's your job. That's everyone's job. Leave the world a better place when you got here, and the world will be much better.
That's a great story. I'll bet you there are a lot of entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs in the audience today who are going, I want to be just like that guy. I want to do what Jason Atkins is doing. So share with us then, what advice do you have for people that have an idea but aren't sure maybe where to begin?
Find somebody who knows something about the space you're in, get them around the table to be a mentor or advisor to you, take constructive criticism well, because a lot of entrepreneurs think they have the end all solution, and you've got to tweak and morph as you're doing things. Things change all the time. The most successful companies in the world aren't the company they started out to be at the beginning. They've added, they've changed, they've morphed. And so make sure that you do that, and make sure you do it with the heart. People want to work for somebody, who's going to take care of them and take care of others, and to me, that's the community that you build. We talk a lot about culture at 360, the values that we have as an organization. We have Travis Duca, who's such an unbelievable human. Travis started with us in the early days. I don't think we paid him. I think he lived in Ottawa, and he's like, I just want to work at this company. He wanted to work with Todd. And so we're like, okay, we'll buy your train ticket, but we don't have no money to pay you. And so he literally got on the train. He'd come and work with us for a few days. He's now, our culture curator of the organization. I actually think he has a real fancy title of something else, but I call him culture curator because that was his title. But he's so focused on how do we build connections, with people within the organization. And so, I've surrounded myself by unbelievable individuals that have helped us be successful. Too many entrepreneurs try to do everything themselves. You can't do it. I think you said it earlier. You surround yourself by smarter people than you. 100%. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. What I've done really well is network well. Bring really smart people around me. Have them help build something with you. And make sure that when they do that, you take care of them and you take care of everyone else. That's what you need to do. Don't be a solo entrepreneur. That's very, very hard. Make sure you build community around you. Join the communities that are going to make impact, to you and then to others.
That's great advice for those entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs in the audience. So everything just sounds great. And I know everything is not always great along the journey. So sitting where you are today, thinking about all the impact that you've had, is there anything you would have done differently sitting here today when you look over the last number of years?
You know what? Hindsight's one of those things that you look back. There are so many things that I would think if you asked a question that you would do different, and then you realize that like you got here because of the way you did things. You got here because of the decisions you made. You know, when you learn something, you learn it by doing it. You know, I always say like, how does somebody learn how to ride a bike? Your parents put you on the bike and you fell off and it hurt. And you're like, crap, that hurt. I don't want to ever feel that again. I'm going to like actually learn how to ride this thing, you know? And then it becomes this memory thing that we all can ride bikes, you know? And for me, it's like, so there are so many things that have happened in the history of the company, you know, that I look back and say, if I knew something different, I would have done it different at that point in time. But the reality is we would never be where we are today. And everything's not perfect today. Like things are tough every day. You know, we deal with tough global brands. We deal with like being global now and having people everywhere. We deal with, you know, the cultures at a global level. We deal with, you know, the economics at a global level, like the impact of, you know, foreign currencies, you know, the impact of things that are happening around the world that we can't change. You know, and so what we focus on are what are the things that we can do? What are the things that we can control, you know, and focus on those things. But there's not one thing that I would change, you know, in the history, because I wouldn't be here if I made those changes.
Yeah. So you were speaking before when you were giving advice to budding entrepreneurs. You said, get someone who knows the space, but be flexible because you may have to morph as you start to evolve the company. So thinking about 360 Insights, how has the business changed from what you originally had as an idea for the company? What's the like? Did you have any major pivots or shifts as you grew the company and as it evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we were called 360 incentives when we started, right? And so the idea in the early days was like, I'm going to pay out these incentive claims. And what you realized was like, that will become a commodity over time. The payment of a claim, the payment of moving money or whatever. That's a commodity business. You know, Insights takes it to a different level, which is a value creation business. Like how people be successful in their business, make better decisions, you know, is going to have them create value, which then they're going to want to continue to grow with you. And so, you know, years ago, we started realizing we had all this unbelievable data in our systems, and we weren't talking to our customers about how do you change the way you do things? Like, why do you want a rebate? Why do you run a sales incentive? Why do you run whatever other type of incentive you may be running? You know, let's look at what's actually happening. Let's look at what's happening in the regions that you play in today. And how do we make you, you know, more measured and be more efficient and effective with what you're doing every single day. And so that was a big shift for us, you know, and it's one of those things that like, I'm the all-in person, you know, so it's like the day you realize that the path you're on is the wrong path, it's like, we're changing everything, you know? And so it's like, we're no longer 360 incentives, we're 360 insights. Somebody owns that domain, buy it, whatever it costs, we're going to buy it. We're going to be insights. We're rebranding the company, you know? And it's like, again, you talk about like, how do you get to where you need to go? It's like, it's communication. Like if you want to be an insights company, we change our name to 360 Insights. So we talk about it every single day. Like leave the incentives is a core component of what we do, but we got to bring it to the next level. And so it was like jump in fully, rebrand the company, you know, and go forward. And I think that when I talk to entrepreneurs, like there's always things that happen that are the aha moments in them. And a lot of people are scared to make those jumps. And I think that that's one of the things that you need to do in life as well. You know, as I've made a lot of really tough decisions in my life, but I'm so thankful for where I am today because of those tough decisions that I made.
So speaking of those decisions, tough decisions versus risky decisions, how like were there a lot? Was there an even amount of them? Was there more tough ones than risky ones? Give us a sense for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a handful of both of those that you're stuck with in life. Like when I started 360, yeah, I had savings and I had a little bit, but like I didn't pay myself for 2 years when I started this company, you know. And most people like, you know, did I run out of money? 100%. Did I have the second mortgage on my house? 100%. You know, most people would be like, I'm going to go back and, you know, take a corporate job or be, you know, whatever it is. And I always say like, an entrepreneur has tenacity, and you give me somebody with tenacity, they'll be successful. Like most ideas don't fail because the idea is bad. Most ideas fail because people give up. And I think that's really important as you think about it as an entrepreneur is like, you know, what are you going to, I mean, the early days of the thing, I was just like, people are like, why are you going to be successful? And I was like, because I'll lose everything before I give up. You know, I'll lose everything, you know, and, yeah, I mean, it was, and there was days like when creditors are calling and stuff like that. There's like, we may lose our house. And I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go in this morning at 6 a.m. and come home at 2 a.m. And I did those in the early days, like I work so hard in this business, and I'm not saying that everyone has to work crazy hard. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, so I had to work really hard, but worked really, really, really hard to make it successful, and that's what I say to everyone is like, things will get tough in life. You sometimes just got to put in the time and hours to do it. And if you're not prepared to do that, like, don't be an entrepreneur, because it does take that. There'll be times where you have to do that. And I'm in a great spot in life today. I'm so thankful for everything that I have. I have an unbelievable family that's supportive, unbelievable wife that's supportive, in all my craziness that I do. And it's really that the infrastructure around you, like, what's your infrastructure? Make sure you have those conversations first. Like, what are you going to do? At what point are you going to give up? And like, people ask me, at what point are you going to give up? I was like, never. I will never give up. That's why we'll be successful.
That's a very profound statement. I will be successful because if I'm not, I lose everything. Very profound. Now, there is a question coming from the audience who's saying, Jason, it sounds like 360 has incredible culture. What's your favorite thing about our culture, and what's your vision for how it will continue to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, we do have an amazing culture, and I'll give a lot of credit to Todd when he joined. I mean, I hired Todd, like, I think employee 14, and hired him into sales. And I remember he joined like 2 weeks after he joins. He's like, Jay, you talk a lot about like culture and building this place where you want to go to work every day and you want to make impact in the world. He's like, but I've been there 2 weeks and like, I know there's only like 14 people here, but like nobody's talking to me, And I was like, that's amazing, Todd. That's your job now. And so I turned him into chief of staff. So he jumped full in. You're a chief of staff. Go figure that out. And like, he come back like a week later. He's like, we got to go to Las Vegas. And I was like, okay. And like, we're going to see this company called Zappos. And we went down there and we met Zappos. And the thing that was really profound to me when I met Zappos was Zappos' focus was an unbelievable experience for their customers, right? So you buy shoes online, and Zappos was so focused on the experience that you had. They spent very little in marketing. All of their growth was referrals that they had. And you saw the culture that they built there. And it was like this, there was a lot of metrics and stuff like that to determine success, but there's a lot of focus around the environment they built for their teams, building community that they had within their team members, making sure they made impact. We were down there during, Thanksgiving, and they would go outside and cook for everyone in the community that needed something. They would make sure. And it's like, that's what we want to be part of. Like, because what you want to do is you want to have people around you, that have the same values of you. So we went through an extra, like, let's define the values in the organization. How do we ensure that we hire and fire on values? Not everyone's a fit for 360, and so we got to determine is when they're not a fit, how do you part ways? Now you hired them, so it's your responsibility to take care of them. And so like, we always take care of everyone who leaves 360, we take care of. That's our focus, is make sure we take care of them because they came into our organization. But not everyone should stay in your organization. So you need to make sure that you keep people that fit the organization, people that don't, you move beyond, And I love that we have a culture that can call that out, that people can call me out, we do these daily huddles, 4 days a week. And I host one every Thursday, and people call me out all the time about things that, might be happening or might have been said. And I appreciate that. Like, that's open, transparent, culture that you have. And so, I mean, there's so many things that I love in the business. And I think our culture will continue to evolve as a company, but it will always be a company that cares about its people and cares about the communities. And, we'll continue to evolve to care more about our people. For me, I get more proud when people are successful and we make more impact in their lives. Like, I know we these culture ambassadors that are like student council, get voted in every year. We do this retreat with them. And last year, one of the things that somebody said, which I love so much, I think it was Crystal, said, like, our responsibility is to ensure that we send people home in a better spot than when they got to the office that day. And I was like, wow, like, think about that. Like, how many times you as a company think about somebody shows up and we got to make sure they have a fantastic day. So when they go home at night, they're a fantastic person. Because in your own life, like, when you have a crappy day, you go home, your family feels that, right? And I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's the evolution of our culture right there. Is like, how do we make sure that we transfer people home to be their best selves when they get home? Because when they're the best selves at home, their families are in the best spots that they could possibly be into, which means that everyone's doing better.
That's great. Great advice for a lot of people. Companies forging ahead, growing, What's next for you in 360 Insights?
Yeah, I mean, I say it every day. Like, we're just getting started. Like, I feel like it's day one for us, yeah, we've grown a lot, but there's so much opportunity for us, I hope the company's 10 times its size, in 10 years from now, and we're a billion in revenue, not just a billion in value. We're a billion in revenue. We're impacting the world $10 million plus a year, a ton of people's time, doing things. We're global. We're an organization that people look to and say, like, hey, I want to go meet 360 and understand, like, what do they do and how do they do it? And how do we build an organization like that? It's like, at the end of the day, Salesforce is what, really started to motivate me in the early days, on that you could build a company that's unbelievable. And I give Mark so much credit for what he's done there. I want people to look at us the same way, right? How they've built an unbelievable company that cares. How do we build an unbelievable company that cares? And for us to build some, artifacts around that, for people to be like, here's a path forward to build a company that cares about its team, cares about its communities that's part of them, cares about its customers.
So what will be the pinnacle to know that you've reached that spot? Is it a case study in a university commerce program, or
Yeah.
what's going to let you know that you've hit that pinnacle?
I wanted Jason to talk the way that I talk about Mark, to talk about that on a call. Like, I don't care about the case study, to be honest. Like, one of our values is it's not what you say, it's what you do. And to me, that's what it's all about. Like, I don't want somebody to put something in paper. I don't typically do, interviews or whatever, but I love Spark and I love you. And I was like, I'm going to join for that, because for me, it's all about actions. Like, what will be there is some entrepreneur one day says, hey man, like, I saw what you guys did, and I built a company that's so much like what you did. And there's the impact that we make because of that. I'm like, that's success to me. When somebody says, like, you impacted my life, that's success to me. I mean, I talked about Mastermind Talk the other day, and I was at the last Mastermind Talk, and a woman got up and just said, like, I listened to this podcast with a really good friend of mine, Dan Martell, that I did, the only one I've ever done. And she got up and she said, like, I listened to that podcast about taking culture and taking care of people, and it was everything that I needed to take care of my people. And I was like, wow, like, that's the proud moments for me.
Well, and I can tell you that a lot of the comments that are coming in from the audience are all along that line. They're saying, that's what I needed to hear to get me over the hump. Like, I just needed to hear that. So that's great. Now, Jason, we know you keep an extremely busy schedule. There's a lot of things that can distract you off focus. And focus, how important it is when you're building a business and starting up a business. What are those things that take you off track? What are those time wasters, and how do you get around it? I think that's something a lot of our entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, could learn from.
Yeah. So I would say a couple of things. I have two really fantastic people in my life that help me, get through it. So my wife, of course, takes care of almost everything in her life. And I so appreciate that. It's like I said earlier on, make sure you have a partner that's supportive. And so Brenda's unbelievable. And she, really takes care of so much. And then I have an amazing assistant, Barb, who, make sure that I do what I say I'm going to do, and so she reads all my emails. She makes sure I follow up on things, that I need to do. And one of the things that I've learned to be really, really good at is as email. And so I don't go to bed without making sure I've read every email. I use my inbox as my to-do list. I file things really well throughout everything I have. I manage my calendar super tight with Barb, because time is the only thing you have. And so make sure the meetings that you have are the meaningful meetings. Make sure that, the things that you're doing, are the neat things you need to do. And early days, people would get couldn't believe that I would schedule family and stuff into my calendar. And I'd be like, if I don't schedule working out or family or stuff like that in my calendar, it doesn't happen, And so you want to make time for stuff, like use your calendar to make time for things. For me, my calendar is one of my biggest assets that I have. Time is one of the most important things you have and the thing you can never buy. So make sure you get really, really tough around your calendar, make sure that everything you have in there is impactful.
Yeah. And, one of the most profound things I heard, and it always is in my mind, and you were hitting all around it. Time is our only non-renewable resource. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. You've got to use it to the max all the time. Jason, like, honestly, I don't know. You've told so many good things that people could, and I hope everybody's been taking notes, but any final thoughts that you would leave with our entrepreneurial community with?
I would say entrepreneurship is tough, but the rewards of entrepreneurship are unbelievable. And with a little bit of hard work or tenacity, anything's possible. It's never the idea that's the failing, in my opinion. It's never the idea. It's the commitment to the idea, and if you have commitment, you will be successful. You got to ask questions to a lot of people. You got to make sure you surround yourself by, great people, but people want to help people. Like, that's a natural trend or thing in life, or character of humans, is helping each other. Like, that's what we've been around our entire lives taught, and so ask, ask for help. Make sure that you reach out to the people that you think can be supportive to you. But it's really tough to be an entrepreneur. There's many, nights where it's hard to sleep. You're like, am I going to make payroll this week? Am I not? All those things. But if you can get to the other side of it, the things you can do, the impact that you can make, the lives that you can change, there's no better reward than being an entrepreneur.
That's great. Great thing to leave people with. Jason, I got to tell you, I've always really liked you and been very, very inspired by you as a business person and what you've done. And I got to tell you, it's just completely elevated both levels today. So I'm liking you a whole lot more, and I'm way more inspired by you as a business person, just based on our conversation. So listen, I really want to thank you, Jason. I mean, you've given so much advice, and what I would say is just really kind of, hey, these are all things that are achievable. The advice you've given everybody and what you've talked about is something everybody can do every day that they're building their business, or as they're thinking about an idea for a business. I can't thank you enough. I mean, I think this has been truly inspiring for a lot of people. A lot of the comments are saying that. I want to thank you so much for doing what you're doing in Durham region, doing what you're doing in Whitby, doing what you're doing for all your employees and all those communities that 360 Insights is helping, in addition to your customers. Like, it's absolutely phenomenal. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So good. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your time. And listen, we'd love to have you back sometime.
All right. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Well, let me tell you, I'm telling you, I'm so inspired. I've known Jason for years, but things that he talked about today, wow! I'm sure I'm equally as impressed as everybody in the audience. This Startup Grind was proudly presented by Spark Center, and we want to say thank you again to all of Spark Center's elite partners: Breskin and Parr LLP, Finance Without Borders, RDP Associates, Leighton, Suresh Law, Real Estate Refreshed, and Coldwell Banker. There will not be a Startup Grind in August, but keep an eye on Spark Center's social pages for more upcoming events. Now we're going to move into our networking time. And if you wish to join us, you can navigate to this section by clicking the people icon on the left side of your screen. You'll be paired up with one person at a time for 3 minutes. You can use this time to get to know each other, and you'll have the option to extend the session if desired. And once the time is up, press ready, and Hopin will automatically move you to the next person. Click the connect button and you're good to go. So if you'd like to exchange contact information with anybody, you can do it at that time. So thanks, and we look forward to seeing you at the networking session. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.